Good day and welcome to another edition of Acuity Solutions Solid Edge Lunch and Learn program. Today's topic will be the surfacing enhancements that were added to ST6, a release that was sent out earlier this summer. The surfacing functionality in Solid Edge is built in to most releases of Solid Edge, and I say most. Some of the lighter versions of Solid Edge perhaps might not have surfacing in them, but in a general sense, most of you who have Solid Edge will have these surfacing capabilities built in. My name is Mike Ritzer, and I'm an application engineer for Acuity Solutions, and I'm pleased to present this information, and again, welcome to another edition of Acuity Solutions Lunch and Learns. During this Lunch and Learn, I'm going to try to cover as many of the enhancements in ST6 with regard to surfacing as I can in this amount of time. Surfacing, I find in the user community, surfacing has limited use only because either people don't have a use for it or they don't understand it enough to utilize it as part of the solution package when they're modeling parts. I do see a lot of mold designers and tooling designers using surfacing to some degree, and that's great. But I think that a lot of folks perhaps just are mystified by surfacing and some of its capabilities and how it works. So not only am I going to try to convey all the new stuff in ST6, but I'm also going to try to give a few basics and some tools and tips to hopefully make your experience with surfacing a little bit more useful. And at the end of this video, we'll be stopping, and you can ask questions at that time. So if you have any questions, write them down, and then at the end of the video, the moderator will come online and answer any of the questions that you might have. So to get started, ST6 did give us a lot of really nice enhancements in surfacing, and surfacing just continues to get stronger and better with each release of Solid Edge. In this first example, I would like to explain the 3D handle enhancements that they've provided for surfacing. And again, surfacing is a tool that's available on most Solid Edge installations. And again, if you have a lighter version, you may not have this capability. I don't know exactly what comes with what anymore, but most of you will have the surfacing tab and will have these surfacing capabilities. If you don't, please see your salesperson at Acuity Solutions, and they can describe to you whether you do or do not have surfacing, and perhaps you just don't have the tab turned on or whatever. So you can see surfacing has a ton of stuff, a ton of features in it, not all of which we're going to talk about. Some of these have been around for a long time. Some of them are relatively new, like the Redefine and the ruled surfaces, and I'm going to try to go through some of these and at least explain how some of these things work. So again, first off, we're going to talk about 3D handles and some of the enhancements that they've given us to make it easier to get the surface to do what we want it to do. Now, the blue surf capability has been around for a long time, and that gives us the ability to specify profile sections and then guide curves, and then create a surface over that set of curves. And so I'm going to go ahead and use the blue surf function here. And the first step in the process is to grab the cross sections that we want for the blue surf. So I'm going to use this cross section here as one of them, and I'm going to go ahead and right click. Again, I could go up and click the green check, but I'm just going to right click. So I've accepted that as one of my cross sections. I'm going to zoom in here and I'm going to grab this guy, and you can see the endpoint from the previous selection is pointing at, let me get this up a little higher here, is pointing at a point that's at the lower left hand corner of the edge that I'm picking. So it's kind of a target. Again, right click to commit. And what it's going to do is it's going to sweep a surface between those two cross sections. Now, Blue Surf is smart enough to say, well, this may be all that they want to do, so if this is all I want to do is just sweep a surface between these two, I'm done, and I can hit preview and I can commit the surface to the tree over here. But I can also come here to the guide curve step, and the guide curve step allows me to pick other, and again right mouse click, other edges that will be the drive curves. And you can see already, if you have any Blue Surf experience or any surfacing experience in Solid Edge, you can already see that there's some additional information here that's being portrayed during this process. And again, I'm going to use this edge here as another drive curve. Right click and commit. So I'm getting a very nice looking surface. One of the things in ST6 that they're giving us is a preview. I'm not sure that this happened before, and so I did read that this was an enhancement in ST6. You may have been seeing previews in the past in some cases, but I think in all cases in surfacing, they're now giving you a preview. By that I mean it's showing you what the surface is going to look like before you actually go and commit it to the tree. So again, you can see that there are other things that are coming in now, which is what we are calling handles. And in this case, you can see that the curve kind of comes down and then just kind of runs into this edge right here. What I'd like it to do is come down and come in at a normal angle to this curve right here. So to do that, I can go here and I can change the selection for this option, and I can tell it that I want it to be normal to the section. We'll cover some of these other ones in the angle to and all those things in some of these other examples as I go through this. But you can see now that the change has the surface coming in at a normal vector to the surface that it's attaching to, and I'll go ahead and change that back to what it was, which was the natural as the default. And you can see that it comes down like a ski slope almost and bottoms out right at that point. So again, some very nice tools so that you can make your surface behave the way that you really want it to behave. Now, I don't know if you noticed or not, but there's another handle in here now. Because I went to the normal curve, I'll go back to natural, and you'll see that it disappears because the surface comes right down and just whacks into this edge right here. So there's no reason for a handle. But what it's adding when I do normal is it's adding a handle out here that I can grab a hold of this handle, and I'm left clicking and holding on it, and I can drag this out and I can move the position of that back and forth. And it changes the shape of the surface. You can see it's kind of bowing this out a little bit here. It changes the shape of the surface based on the number that I'm applying in there. And I can click on that and I can say that I want that to be 1. Set it back to 1. And that gives me the number that I was looking for. So again, up here, this guy's coming up and it's just whamming right into that guy, running right into it. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to a normal section to kind of bring that out and make it look a little more aesthetically pleasing. Likewise, on the outsides here, these surfaces are not going to be normal. They're going to just intersect with the surface below them. So I can go to tangent continuous, and you'll see that there's just a subtle change in the tangent continuous. Not much of a change in this. And again, with the curvature continuous is the same. But you'll see in different cases where those changes will make some significant impact on the shape of the shape of the surface that you're trying to create, which is very nice. Now these handles, as they appear to you here, are now being portrayed to you on the variable table. And if you haven't played with the variable table, I strongly recommend that you do that. They've specified all these tangencies and magnitudes and all these things, and you can change the values of all these things right here on the variable table if you want to. You can also express them in terms of formulas and things like that. So it gives you a lot of flexibility and power in how you're going to define these surfaces. Excuse me. Now, maybe I imported these surfaces perhaps from an X_T file or from a IGES file or a step file or something, perhaps from a customer or whatever, and I want to make some changes to this surface in here. Well, I can go in here and I'll go do an edit definition, And one other item that they've added in the tree, and if you've used BlueSurf before, let me go back here. If you've used BlueSurf before, there's an insert sketch function that has always been there. But now in the tree or in the Smart Step ribbon bar, as you're building the surface, you can go to the insert sketch step right here. And what that allows us to do then is to pick a curve that we want to apply a normal to curve along. You can see that the reference plane is moving back and forth across here, and I'm just picking up the midpoint of this guy, so I know I'm right at the midpoint of that. What it did was it inserted a sketch in front of the BlueSurf. It basically takes the outline of that curve, of that surface, and gives me a curve, a sketch curve, that I can now go back and modify. So if I right click on this guy, and we'll do a dynamic edit so we can see the changes right online here, and if I click this curve, you can see all the control points for the curve. So if I grab this one point right here, and again I'm left clicking and holding, I can drag that one point in and change the perspective of that surface and its shape. Likewise, if I grab this guy, I can bump that out a little bit. I have complete control over this surface and the ability to change the shape of the surface just by changing that sketch. So again, I built this surface as a BlueSurf, but those surfaces could have come in from a customer via an IGES file or whatever, and I could have done this as well this way. So very, very powerful tools in the ability to control the surface and how it's going to look. So what we're going to do next, again, I want to touch on some of these items that are are somewhat basics to surfacing, but things that folks may not have ever experienced before. So I want to kind of give a little bit of some information on how to do certain things in surfacing and why we would do surfacing and what values we're going to get out of it. So what I want to do is I want to close up this bottom. I want to create a surface on the bottom of this section right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a bounded surface. Now I don't have excuse me, I don't have any curves across here. So I could add curves by using the key point curve, and that's a pretty simple process. By using the key point curve, I can click on this edge here and this edge here, those key points, right click, and it gives me a straight line. Now I can use these straight lines. I'm going to go ahead and add one over here just so you can see what's going on here. So I can use these straight lines and the edges of those surfaces to go ahead and create a bounded surface. And to do that, I'm just going to select that. I've got this set on single. I'm going to go ahead and change it to chain. No, I'm not, because I want the ends of those. I don't want the whole surfaces. It's chaining surfaces together. I don't want that. So I'm going to go ahead and select these items along here. Now you notice this closed up for me automatically. This is a new enhancement in ST6 called Close Boundary, and we're going to investigate that in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off so you can see that I haven't finished selecting this last piece. And when I do, again, I get the preview. I check it off or I right click, and that generates a surface on the bottom of that. So let's back up here and let's get rid of the key point curves. Key point curves can be added at any time, but again, in bounded surface now, they have an option to close the boundary. So if I select these guys, I start coming to a point where it can close in. Maybe I did need one of those. I was thinking that this would close up, but I guess it doesn't really know where to close it. Let me pull this back. There, we'll pull back one of these key point curves and we'll do this again. So I guess it does need at least one of these guys. But again, I'm going to turn on the close curve, and as I go across these, there you see it's starting to fill in the surface as I click on these edges. And once I get here, it doesn't even need that one because it knows I want to close across there. So they're giving us a lot more tools that make it a little more efficient to create these surfaces. Alright, so I've got one on the bottom, and I've got one, I'm going to put one on the end here. So again, a bounded surface. And I'm going to use these edges here. Again, at that point I wouldn't have needed that key point curve, right? Because I've got that bottom surface to close it up. And one more here. Get zoomed up here so I can see this little piece right here. And it's starting to build them in there as I go along. Again, it's closed up. So now it's starting to kind of look like a solid, right? But it really isn't. These are just sheet bodies, and they don't really have a solid mass to them. And the way we get a sheet body to turn into a solid is, number one, we have to have a set of sheets, a set of surfaces that are what we call watertight surfaces. They hold water. There's no gaps in between these. There's no edges that don't come together. And a lot of times if you read in a file from IGES or from STEP or from a customer from another CAD system, a lot of times there will be gaps in here. And it will not heal into a solid unless you use a little bit of Solid Edge magic. And if in this case, I know this is all watertight because I built the surfaces myself, so I know it's watertight. But if they're not, I'll show you how you can fix that. So to turn it into a solid, what we want to do is we want to stitch all the solids together. It's a mathematical process that Solid Edge goes through to take all these curves and stitch them all together. Just take all these surfaces and stitch them all together. And one of the items in there is a stitch tolerance. And so if you're getting in something from a CAD system and it's not healing, it's not stitching together into a solid, you can open up this tolerance a little bit. And a lot of times if you open up the STEP file or the IGES file, and sometimes the Parasolid file, if it's a text file, you can look in there and you can see the tolerance number. And a STEP file and an IGES file is just a text file. And if you open it up at the very top, it'll tell you the CAD system that created it, the version of the CAD system. There's all kinds of things about the math engines and all the stuff that are going on inside of that CAD system. And a lot of times if you look close enough, you'll find a tolerance, and you can take that tolerance and convert it into a stitch tolerance here, and open up your tolerance of what is considered a gap and what should be healed up. And so if you click off the heal stitch surfaces, it will take those into consideration and it will heal them together, and it will create you a solid. So if you're having trouble, that's a little trick that you can try. Open up that tolerance a little bit. So I'm going to use the stitch command. I want to create a solid. So now I'm just going to put a fence window around it and select all of my surfaces, tops, bottoms, ends, and all that. And then I'm going to right click, and it knows that it's a watertight set of surfaces and it can be turned into a solid body, and it's asking me right here if I want to do that. And if I say yes, you'll see that the surfaces go away. They don't really go away, they're just hidden, and it heals it into a solid body. Okay, and we know that that's a solid body just because of the color, perhaps. The surfaces tend to be that magenta color, and then the solid bodies are this gray color or whatever color it is that you set up in your settings. So the next thing I want to show you is that this is actually a solid, right? And so one of the ways you can verify that is just to do a cut through it. So let's say that I just do a cutout. I'm going to use an open profile. I'm going to tell it that I want to remove that information and just cut it back. Now I should have gone through all, right? Those of you that have used Solid Edge and been trained by me know that that's not the proper way to do it, but I did it anyway. So anyway, that you can see that is a solid. Now there's a little bit less invasive way of looking at cross sections through your solid, and if you haven't seen this before, it's kind of a nice tool. Let's see, it's under surfacing. No, it's not under surfacing. Where is it? I'm sorry, I've got to find this. What I'm looking for is it's under PMI. It's kind of a strange place to put it, but under PMI, which stands for Product Manufacturing Information, there is a section function, and it works a lot like a cutout. You specify the plane that you want to put the cut on, you specify what the cut's going to look like, and then likewise you cut it through. And if you're doing this you can do this in an assembly, so you can tell it to only cut certain parts. That's why it's asking for this, cut all parts. So I'm just going to let it cut all parts and finish. So it did basically the same thing as a cutout, except that it didn't whack the part. It didn't add a feature in the tree that actually changed or invasively changed the part. What it did do was it added on my tree this section view. And if I expand this out, you can see there's one section in here, and if I hit this check mark, it just turns it back onto the solid body. It basically turns off that section view. So what's cool about the section views, let me turn this guy off, is that you can add multiple section views in here. So let's say I want to cut a chunk out of the side of this thing. So I'm going to go like this. And I'm going to close the sketch. I'm going to tell Solid Edge I want to remove the insides, and I want to go back, and we'll go back about that far. So you can see that now I've got two section views. Now what's cool about the section views is if I want to see a combination of both, I can turn them both on at the same time, and I get a cross section that shows both of those section views active. And I think that's really, really powerful. So hopefully that's a tool that you can utilize. And so that's all I got to say about the 3D handles. We're going to stay in the vein of the bounded surface functionality in Solid Edge just to show you one more enhancement in ST6. I've got this surface. Basically I created an extruded surface with this sketch, and I'm going to go ahead and create a bounded surface again with the closed boundary turned on, and I'm going to go ahead and select the edges of this surface, and you can see it's filling it in for me as I go along. And so I've committed and I've got this surface. Nothing new here. I've just talked about this in the last section. But what I want to do now is I want to turn on a sketch that has a point on it. You can see the point floating out in space. I just created a reference plane off the base reference plane and stuck a point in space. And I want to show you that in ST6 they've added the enhancement of giving us the ability to use a guide curve and add a point as the guide curve. So watch what happens as I add that point. Now the surface takes on a shape to encompass that point as a drive curve. And so that gives you a little bit more control over what's going to happen here. And again, the point has complete control over the surface. So if I go back to that sketch that has the point on it, I'm going to do a dynamic edit so that I can change this thing and see what the effect is on the surface. And I'm just going to lower the reference plane that point is on, again bringing that cone-shaped surface closer to the base, which is kind of nice. And I'll go ahead and set that to a value. Let's make that 9. And I can also select the point, and if I left click and hold on the point and drag it, again I'm doing a dynamic edit so that I can see the effect of it. But you can see that now that it's lower, it's changed the actual shape, what it's looking like. If I go higher, then it would probably look a little bit better there. So again, drive curves, I'm not sure if drive curves were available in previous versions of the bounded surface functionality, but they did add the point capability within that within the bounded surfaces. So very nice. Once again, just for review, I'm going to go ahead and close up this bottom surface. So let's see, if I turn this off and I make this chain, let's see what happens here. Yeah, then it chains it together. And now that I have a watertight volume or watertight surfaces, what can I do? I can stitch it together. Select all my surfaces, right click, and tell it yes, I do want that to become a solid, and now it is a solid body. just going to go ahead and thin wall it out for you. Magnificent, isn't it? Solid Edge ST6 provides us in surfacing the ability to redefine surfaces now. And in this example, you can see there's 9 surfaces out here that are all they're all separated different surfaces. And I want to create one blue surf from those 9 surfaces. So the way that's accomplished is by using the redefine function. And there's one setting in here that you're going to want to pay attention to, and I think it's in this settings block right here, and I'm not correct there. Let me close that and go to this one. Yeah, it's right here. If you do not check this off in the redefine surface function, all it's going to do is create a secondary surface. So if you want to copy a surface and join it all together, or copy a group of surfaces and join them all together into one blue surf, you can do that by turning this off. But if you turn that on, it's telling Solid Edge that I want you to take these surfaces and I want you to replace them with a blue surf. So I'm just going to come in here and select these 9 separate surfaces, right click, and let Solid Edge go off and create a blue surf, and you'll see it appear down here in the list. And I'm going to go ahead and commit this in a second here, but I want to show you that you've got all the editable handles here to change how things are going to look. And so if you want to change the shape of this body at all, you can always do it that way. So, okay. So we'll come back to natural. We'll go ahead and hit preview. And you'll see on the tree that it will create a blue surf. And then again, we've got the ability to insert a sketch in here. So let Solid Edge think about that for a minute, and then you can drop that sketch along that, any curve along there, and then you will see that it will create an insertable sketch there that again we can go ahead and redefine the shape of that sketch and change the actual shape of the surface. So there's a lot of control that you can add into that blue surf once you have converted those surfaces to blue surf. Now I want to do one more part here. So I'm going to go ahead and open up another part. And again, this one's only one surface, but I want it to become a blue surf. So I can just take this one surface and tell it that I want to define it as a blue surf, and it'll go ahead and do that. But one of the other enhancements that they have in here is if I want to go forward and insert a sketch, I'm going to go ahead and hit preview. If I want to insert a sketch, one of the other items that you can pick from here is the what they call the UV face, or the face UV, which is I think the vertical and the horizontal lines that make up the surface, and I believe that that's controlled by the mesh density on the visualization. I'm not sure exactly, and I haven't played around with that much, but you can play around with that if you want to. But once you've got this set up to pick a UV face, you can tell it to use that as a key point, and it will actually return that as a key point curve that you can use for other things later on in life. And so there you go. So again, that's a way that you can grab the meshing on the surface and create curves for control that way. Another enhancement in Solid Edge ST6 surfacing is the ability now to look at the part with reflective planes. And in the past, if we wanted to see, for instance, maybe this has a top and a bottom, or a left and a right, and they're basically exact opposites of each other. The only way we really had to do that was to save the model and then insert it into another part and mirror it over some reference plane, and then we could look at it. And you know, those used to update together, and it was great, and everything worked fine. And sometimes you need those models, and those are the ways to get to that point. But sometimes you just want to see the model in its left and right hand version, and you don't want to have to go through all the rigmarole of creating more PAR files to make that happen. So they've given us this reflective plane functionality in Solid Edge ST6, and what it allows us to do is reflect the body over a plane. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn on the base reference planes so that you can see that currently this is reflected over the front reference plane. And how do you set that? Well, there's a settings function in the reflective plane group there, and you can see right here that they've got the front turned on and the other two turned off. So if I turn off the front and turn on the right and click OK, I get a front to back because the right plane is right in the middle of the two components. And the other thing that's kind of nice about this that you can't, well, you might be able to do it with insert part copy. I guess I've never tried it, but you have the ability with reflective planes to turn on multiple planes. So if you wanted to see them maybe a left, right, top, bottom together, then you can do that. There's also a setting in here for transparency, so you can take the reflectivity and you can make it transparent so that then you can see kind of what's going on. And your regular body is still shown as a solid body, and everything else is kind of transparent. So I'm going to go back to the front view, and again, the nice thing about this is it's totally reflective, right? So anything that I do to this body will be reflected over here. And for instance, this happens to be a synchronous model, and so you get a little bit of a synchronous training on this one. For those of you that haven't spent a lot of time in synchronous, I'm going to grab this back plane and I want to pull it out. Let's say I want to pull it out 20 millimeters. So I click on this guy and I pull it out and I enter in 20 and press enter, and it's failing. Well, those of you that know synchronous know that there's probably an issue with the fact that that back face on the part is on the same plane as one of the reference planes. It just happens to be stuck on the back of whatever this reference plane is here. And because Live Rules is active, it's not allowing me to do that. And that's a good thing. Live Rules is coming in and saying, hey, you have this design intent already in your body. Do you really want to change this and make this different? So at this point in time, again, those of you that have used synchronous, it's a little redundant, but at this point in time, I could do one of two things. I could turn off the live rule that's holding that face to the base reference plane. Now that's not the best way to do it, because as humans we forget to turn stuff back on, and once I turn it off, it's going to stay off until either I turn it back on or I hit live rule restore. So in ST5 they gave us the ability to actually select the face that we want to relax. So if I come in here and say I want you to relax that face, it will allow that face to kick out. It'll overrule the live rule and override the live rule and allow that to happen and make shape change. So again, that's a little bit of synchronous for you. But again, the point here is that the reflective plane actually does reflect exactly what's going on with the part. One other thing I'll mention about this particular example, and again this was a random example and I saw a couple things that I thought would be interesting to you as a Solid Edge user, and I'm going to go ahead and turn off the reflective planes. These magenta surfaces here, when we've seen this before, those magenta surfaces the magenta color indicates that they are surfaces, and it looks like the creator of this part has already stitched them together into some form of a stitched watertight surfaces. And so I would like to add that onto the body, and I want to do that in the synchronous mode. And so to do that, you just right click on that stitch and you say attach, and it asks you, well, which direction do you want to attach it? Well, I want to attach it into my existing body, And then now I've got a solid that it exists and has all of those things attached. You know, one of the limitations in synchronous now, though, is that I can't go back and change those surfaces and make a change to the part. I've got to actually physically, you know, go in and grab these things and move them. So I don't know if I can even move this guy. Let's see if I can move this out. Yeah, there we go. So now your body is basically the king, right? Now the body is what's really doing all the work. And see, there's some issues going on in there, and so again, so this is synchronous, and that's a whole different modeling. In this next topic, we're going to explore another enhancement in ST6 called ruled surfaces. It creates a surface that extends out in a specified direction from the selected edges. So what does that mean? Well, simplistically, there's different options in here that you can specify. Normal to a face, tangent, and so on. I'm going to leave it at normal to face right now. And specifically what's going to happen here is you can see that it's added in a surface. It's previewing it for me. If I click the arrow, it moves it out the other way. And I can also chain things together, so I can chain those together. And it's basically creating a surface along that edge. And this is called a ruled surface. Now I'm going to go ahead and add one inside of this face right here, and you'll see that there's some, I'm not sure if this is an issue with Solid Edge, if there's you know, maybe it's not quite all finished, or I'm not sure what's going on here, but if I want to like put a ruled surface all the way around this thing, it won't do it between non-tangent items. So if I click that, it gives me an error because they're non-tangent, they actually touch each other. So I'm not really sure you know, if that's a bug or if it just is as designed, but basically the idea, what you have to do here is you have to break it up into separate pieces. So I'm going to do this piece next, and then do this piece. Actually, I wanted to go the other way with it, but you get the idea. Let me go ahead and change that so it's on the inside. And now see, now I've got an error, and then probably the reason is because it's too much of a, it can't do 50 millimeters, and that's not the reason why these aren't working. You know, I'm not really sure why you can't just pick all of those edges, but it just seems like you can't. So I'm going to change this one to 10. Oh, not that one. Put that one back out at 50. Make this one 10. And where's my other 10? This must be the other 10. So, but it is very cool what it does, and it does create those really nice surfaces in there, and you know, sheet metal and stuff like that. I think it's going to make a big difference on what you're capable of doing. But it goes even further than that. Ruled surface allows us to not only create a surface normal to a surface, but you can also do it at an angle. So we're going to go back and revisit this guy, and I'm going to go ahead and edit its definition, and I'm going to change this to, like, let's say tapered to a plane. So if I pick this plane, now I can specify that I want it on a 45 or a 135. Maybe I want it on a 135. It goes back that way, and so you can start to specify different ways of controlling that ruled surface, tangent, continuous, and natural, and along an axis. And I haven't done all of these, but you can see that there's a lot of stuff that you can do with this new function called ruled surfaces in Solid Edge ST6. In this last segment of the Lunch and Learn for ST6 surfacing, I'm going to revisit a little bit of a closure thing. I'm going to close up the bottom of this set of surfaces that we've already seen before, and again I'm going to use a key point curve to make that happen. So I'll go from here to here. That gives me a nice straight line there. Finish that up, and then again I'm going to do a bounded surface, and I'm going to go ahead and let it close it up. And let's see what I want to do that. We want to go to a single because it's picking that whole surface. So we closed up that surface. Excuse me. Now I'm going to create another extruded surface off from the side here. So bear with me a minute. I'm going to go ahead and create this from, let's see here, what do we want to do it from? The right view, I guess. And I'm just going to create an extruded surface with some sort of curved shape on it. Alright, so now what I would like to do is I've got this nice shaped surface here, and I would like these guys to all extend out to this and take on its shape. So what we can do here is do what's called an extend, and this is nothing new. This has been in Solid Edge for a while. And the one thing that I'm having a hard time with on this is the fact that I can't chain things together. I mean, I can grab that and I can send that across, but as soon as I pick up this guy, see, it won't even let me select those. So I have to do these first and then these separately, and I'm not really sure why, and I'm sure there's a reason why, but I really honestly can't tell you why it's doing that. So I right-clicked when I selected this edge, and then I selected this new surface, and then I right-clicked, and it's giving me a preview, and excuse me, you can see that it has extended that surface out to this new surface, and it's taking on the shape of that surface as well. So I'll go through and continue. Now I don't think I can do anything else here. I've got to do them all in pieces, so which is not a big deal, but it's just a little bit annoying because I'd like to be able to do them all at once, and I'm not really sure why. Oops, I forgot to pick my surface. But it's just the way it is, and it is a powerful tool. So so you can see that it's extended those surfaces out, and it's actually, you know, taken and changed the edges of those surfaces so that they map to this new surface that I have. So now that I've done that, I want to trim back these two, and we've got a trim command, and that's always worked pretty good in the past, but in V6 they've given us the ability to do what's called an intersect. So I'm going to just go ahead and select all of my faces. I want to find the intersection of all of my faces, and so when I right click, it comes back and says, alright, well, here's where your intersections are, and the last step in the process is to remove the regions that you want to remove. Well, let's say I want to keep the end on and I want to get rid of all this other stuff, so I'm just going to simply go in and just select these edges, these surfaces. Let's see, nope, that's not what I wanted to do. I want to pick this guy and this guy, this guy and this guy. I don't know why it's not letting me pick that guy. Now see, this worked fine when I was doing this before. I'm not really sure why that's not letting me trim that intersection away. Let me go through this again to see if I can trim it now. And the shape of my surface here is different than, now see, now it's letting me trim it back. So I'm not sure why it wouldn't do it on the fly, but now there may be some bugs in the initial release software, and they're going to fix things as they go along. But again, if you have these problems, just contact the reseller, Acuity Solutions, or you've got your 800 number that you can report these issues. So that about wraps it up for this edition of the Acuity Solutions Solid Edge Lunch and Learn. On behalf of Acuity Solutions, Mike Ritzer thanking you for attending today and also for being our customer. Appreciate your business, and we look forward to seeing you in the next Lunch and Learn.